All right, we're here. One of our absolute favorites, the 11 personnel, Nick Roush, Adam Luckett, Kentucky Sports Radio. And Nick, he brought a present here for Cousin Shane.
I would normally I'd say I'm happy to be here, but I'm not. I'm actually not because, yeah, I owe you one, Shane. So hold on to this for me, Luckett. I got some of Kentucky's finest brown water for game.
Oh, there you go.
Little Elijah Craig.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Thank you so
don't
much.
enjoy that, please. Like I hope you
We should
hate
probably
it.
keep that brown bag.
I hope you. I felt a little awkward walking around. But Shane, I know the first bourbon bet got off to a rocky start.
Yes.
For my team, but I'm willing to run it back because the Cats are at home against the Vols this year. There's going to be a quarterback controversy, and will it be Milton or will it be the volleyball player? We don't know. And what we do know is that the Kroger Field is going to be rocking when Tennessee comes to town in October.
Absolutely, I'm in. I'm absolutely in. I think this is going to be. Let me ask you on this bet because everybody knows that we do this bourbon bet. Are you worried that this potentially goes to a biannual game? I mean, there was a rumor floating around that Tennessee and Kentucky wouldn't be one of those annual matchups anymore.
You know, yes and no, because here's the thing. Like, it's like Tennessee to me is like a bad girlfriend that you just keep going back to. And, I want to have that game around because I want to beat him, and it'll feel so good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just know I'm going to get my heart ripped out again.
Yeah.
You know, that girl's going to rip it out. She's going to stomp all over it. But then I'm still going to be sending you up text. So I am worried it's going to go away. But part of me might be like, well, I won't have to deal with those stinking Vols for another year.
Well, and it's a little cheaper if you're not buying bourbon every year.
Shane,
you know,
really just saw the open wound.
All that heartbreak talk, I thought we were interviewing Marler again. Let me ask you, Adam, why do you think, or at least what gives you confidence most that Kentucky can fix their issues on the offensive line? Because I think that's so critical to the entire season, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it can't get worse. It literally cannot get worse. I mean, let's start there. I think they went and got some guys from the portal I think are going to be a level up, but it's not – Kentucky's very much – I think if they hit their peak in offense, they'd be middle of the pack. If everything went glowingly, it might be like the 6th or 7th best offensive line in the SEC. So I don't think the ceiling's really high, but I think the floor, just from an experience standpoint, they had no experience. They had guys playing out of position. Now those guys playing out of position are going to be playing in position. They've got actual true tackles that can play somewhat, and they played at a high level against Power 5 competition. So I think, and not only that, I think Cohen just being in there, Liam Cohen replacing Rich Gangarello, I think that's going to streamline a lot of stuff. Behind the scenes, there was a lot, information overload, I would say. I think a lot of
It's a good way to put it, yeah.
Processing was a huge deal for the whole, I think, offensive organization, coach to player. And I think with Cohen, he, from what I've heard, master communicator, is really able to simplify things a lot. And I think that was one thing Scangarello struggled with was just being too complex, keep it simple, stupid. I think that's maybe a motto they're going to have in the offensive room. And we've seen Cohen do it before. I mean, we've seen him put together a top 25 offense, and he's got weapons. So, and they got the at least we think they got the quarterback, and that should go a long way.
And Eli Cox yesterday was down here at SEC Media Days, and he used the term bogged down. And as an offensive line, it's not like if a receiver runs the wrong route, the quarterback can just look the other way. Offensive line, all 5 guys got to be on the same page, and they weren't last year. They weren't. The newcomers, there's going to be a learning curve, right? They've got to feel each other out. But even in fall camp last year, there were guys getting hurt and then guys switching positions. They didn't even have they didn't know who their first 5 were until the first week of the game. It's a recipe for disaster. So
the pieces are there for them to be really good on offense if the offensive line doesn't suck. I mean,
right.
If they're just, like I said, if they're middle of the road in the conference, Kentucky's got a real chance to be a dangerous offense, I think, this year. But you can't get around it. That's the elephant in the room. We're not going to really know until we get to see them in games.
You don't know until you know.
Well, Stoops was out here the other day, and one of the things he said is, we want to get back to physical ball, and I think Kentucky got a little finesse there a little bit, but it's hard not to when you're looking at what you're bringing in, new quarterback, this fantastic wide receiver room. Ray Davis, under the radar. We were really high on him last year. I think he's going to be a fantastic add.
I voted him all SEC on my ballot.
Yeah.
Oh.
So do you expect more of a running game coming back with Kentucky and Cohen?
That's a great question because we've talked about this a lot. Personnel-wise, they're built to drop back, throw it, get the ball to Barron Brown, Dan Keegan, get the ball to the tight ends. And then in the running back room, they have Ray Davis, and they've added transfers. Like, they have a deep running back room, but I don't think it's going to be like a bell cow type situation. So I think you're going to have heavy personnel kind of usage there. But the passing game has kind of got to lead the way, at least to me, because you really don't. Even the offensive linemen they got, I think both of the tackles might be, I would say, more pass pro maybe first as players. But that's important because with Leary's injury history, you got to protect the asset.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the tight rope I think they need to walk, and that's one concern I have about the offense going in, because we know what Stoops wants to do. Yeah. Like, he wants to win games 14-10. If you could get him on True Serum, and that would be
10-7. Run the damn ball.
Like Nick Saban said the other day on SEC Network, he was like, we get so stretched out on defense now. It's hard. Like, I wish we could just get back in, and play in between the hashes and just beat the crap out of each other. But that's just not how they do it anymore.
Yeah.
But for Kentucky, I do think that's going to be kind of a tightrope. They're going to have to walk a little bit, because for the first time, I think this needs to be a pass-heavy offense, or at least lean that way. It doesn't have to be, I'm not talking air raid levels, Mike Leach levels of pass-heavy, but like Leary needs to be a guy that throws it 35 or 36 times a game. And what is that? That's different for Stoops with how he's managed games in the past.
Well, in the way that, because I brought it up to Stoops as well, and he's like, yes, we need to get those guys the ball, but the Liam Cohen, the Rams system under McVay, it's running to set up the pass. He's like, that's why I brought him here, is that it's an important part of the offense is being able to run the ball. And Cohen said as much too, like, we have to be able to run the ball on 3rd and 1 and get the first down. Like, sometimes you just got to get some hard yards. We got to have that. I think Ray Davis can be the guy that does it, but instead of maybe it was what do we say, 40-60 run or pass run, like maybe you flip it this time and then that can work. But to your point, Chris Rodriguez ain't walking through that door, right? Like, it's guys aren't getting 25 carries a game.
Right.
Yeah. Now, since I went back and watched Devin Leary at NC State, I've said Kentucky's getting an upgrade at quarterback. Now, that may be a bold comment because Will Levis, highest drafted Kentucky quarterback since Tim Couch, got to be, right?
Yep.
But I think when I say that, people think it's just my pure hatred for Will Levis. So I'm curious to know your guys' thought. What's your confidence level that Devin Leary this season is an upgrade over Will Levis last season?
Yeah. The one thing I know is the coordinator QB combo is an upgrade, and that's mainly for the guy holding the play sheet. I mean, that is where the biggest. That's the bit. Like, I think you can make an argument that is the biggest personnel upgrade in the whole conference.
You all think that
Bobby Petrino, Jimbo Fisher, one of those three.
you all think Mike doesn't like Will Levis. This guy, Coach Rich, it was halfway through last year, he had steamrolling out.
So that alone, I think things are going to be a lot easier. I think for the offense this year. Last year it was hard to do almost anything, Nick. I mean, getting plays called into the huddle. There was moments where Levis is screaming at the sideline because they couldn't get the play call in.
They're getting delay of games on, like, important downs because the operation wasn't there. And, I mean, the biggest thing is, like, I just think they're just different players, Devin Leary and Will Levis. Like, Will Levis is a big physicals athlete, whereas Leary, the words they used yesterday to describe him were ball placement, command, control. Like, J.J. Weaver was shocked at how fast Devin Leary could just get the ball to where it needed to be, right? And that was a problem. Like, Levis's biggest knock on him, the reason why he didn't get taken in the first round, he had a slow processor, right? Things weren't going quick enough. That's Leary's strength. So while I'm not ready to get into whom's better than whom's, I will happily concede that Devin Leary's better than Will Levis if we're spending New Year's at the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans.
Levis has a higher ceiling, but I think the floor is probably higher with Leary.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with, a lot is riding on Cohen. We think he's going to be pretty good. You combine that with the weapons Kentucky has, and if your offensive line can hold up, that should lead to good things, I think.
Now, I know I've really needled Kentucky when I get one of two people to react on social media, and I got both of them, Matt Jones Vince Morrow, both of them, here recently when I said Mark Stoops, C coach. That's his little. It's actually C+. I missed the plus. What was your boy's reaction when I said Mark Stoops, C+ coach for his? And this is 10 years of data. So this, when a guy's 1 or 2 years in, the data is a little off. But 10 years, you are what your record says you are.
I never would have graduated if you were my teacher, Mike. and no shot in hell. That's a hard grade. Well, because I think part of, like, if you're saying if it's all even playing field and you're saying Mark Stoops can't win a national championship, these guys can, so I'm going to give them an A, right?
Well, no, I'm using a formula. Dave Bartu invented it, not me. Mm-hmm. And these schools pay him when they have coaching openings to find position coaches. And it's very simple. How much talent you have, how much talent the opponent has, and where the game is played. So if Mark Stoops beats Miami of Ohio, he doesn't get a bump. If he wins at Florida, that's a bump. If he loses at home to Vanderbilt, that's a minus. It's a very simple grade.
Where it doesn't factor in is, like, he's really good at hiring coordinators.
Right.
Like,
not the last one.
What I would say,
like Matt House at LSU now,
yeah.
Brad White, John Summerall won 10 games.
But when you're hitting defense and defense personnel and structure and what they do and how they scheme up against teams. I mean, the only thing Brad White really hadn't figured out is to Heupel yet.
Right.
Everyone else, they
got Georgia, 17 points, right, in your one-score game.
They figured it out on defense, and that's where his strength is, which you would think, defensive side of the ball. They figured out it's the offense that's really been the issue for his whole tenure. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Liam Cohen and a bunch, Eddie Grant did some good things, but it's Liam Cohen and a bunch of busts.
Right.
Really. Yeah. I mean, if we're really being honest about it, they churn through coordinators here. That's where I think the weakness would be. Mm-hmm. And if they ever figured that out, then, they could be cooking with gas. And that's why they got this duo now in 2021. That was a big part of them, I think, having that breakthrough type season was because of the coordinators. And now they got them back. And can you keep them for 2, 3, 4 years and see what you can do? Right. But you're telling me what is Stoops' strengths, weaknesses? I would say, offense, building that has been a big weakness for him, but strength, like he's built, like they're a top 15 defense, and everybody's just like, oh, Kentucky's going to be top 15 defense at Kentucky.
Yeah. And really what it comes down to is he's an A+ Kentucky football coach, but in the SEC, in the pecking order, he's got the longevity.
Yeah.
But there isn't, people aren't like shaking their bootstraps when they see him on the schedule yet. That sort of thing.
Well, by that same model, Brad White is rated as the SEC's best defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. So you can't completely make the model.
Exactly.
I think it's fairly accurate.
I'll tell you one thing that he's nailing it out of the is the transfer portal.
Yep.
You look at the last 2-3 years. I mean, he's not going out there and just getting anybody. He's getting NFL talent and bringing it to Kentucky. So maybe that's maybe that will help the ratings at some point. But,
and that can be the great equalizer too, because I mean, you can get better at recruiting, but there's still just a limit.
Yeah.
In the high school ranks, like there's just
there's a hard ceiling.
Yeah. So, but in the portal, the Stoops' kind of approach, I think, resonates with a lot of guys who are like, I need to maximize this last year or two I got.
Yeah.
And Stoops was just a straight shooter, no bull crap. Like, this is how we do that. And I thought he mentioned when he was talking about Ray Davis, like, and when he's like, as soon as we met him, we were like, okay, this guy's a fit for us. He gets it. And even Eli said that about the offensive linemen they brought in. Like, they're one of us, right? Like, they're guys that aren't going to put up with bull crap. Like, I got to have my way or the highway. Like, they're going to do the work.
Yeah.
Just look at quarterbacks. Like, we can say what we want about Levis, but he was a backup at Penn State, and he became a second-round draft pick at Kentucky.
Right.
He had more rush attempts than pass attempts when he got to Kentucky.
Now you get that allowed you to get maybe the top quarterback or one of the tops in Leary, and you could turn him into a draft pick. Mm-hmm. Just that alone.
They just signed a 5-star, or not signed, but
that
committed.
alone, because Kentucky struggled to recruit quarterbacks. Like, that alone shows you what the portal can, if you're using it efficiently and successfully. You got a track record.
You got a track when you're in this kid's living room saying, hey, come to Kentucky, we're going to give you that opportunity to have that spotlight on you. I think that's the next chapter
here. There's a trickle-down effect with that, too. It's like, we've got guys in the NFL that then to sell the high school kid gets easier because you're actually producing at that position where it was an issue for a long time, and now it's really not an issue.
Yeah.
Like Wandale Robinson comes here.
wood.
Wandale Robinson comes 1 year to go over 1,000 yards, and the receiver recruiting flipped overnight.
They get Barry Brown, top 100 recruit from here in Nashville. Like they don't get that if they don't hit in the portal with Wandale.
Boy, that one hurt.
Now, final question I got for you boys. I know you know, we because of our relationship, you're looking to that Tennessee game because it's so big. But the Florida game, I think that is the one Kentucky fans need to be circling. They own Florida right now, which is wild. After, to Mark Stoops' credit, for years and years, Florida literally owned Kentucky. They've completely flipped that on its head. Is that the game where, if Kentucky drops it, I don't see how they have a great season?
I'll go a step ahead of you. The Vanderbilt game is.
Well, I didn't even want to go there.
Yeah. That is the.
But we can't make that joke anymore because Vandy came to Kentucky and won last year.
They just. There's a lot on the table for Kentucky. And there's a path to when Tennessee comes to town. There's a path to 6-1.
Yeah,
on
top 25 game,
Right.
matchup.
I think a realistic path, but you got to take care of Vanderbilt. It's away from home. You lost to them last year. You cannot afford to lose. Like, to me, that's the game. If they handle that, you know, we'll know a lot more about Florida at that point because they'll play Utah, Florida, or Utah and Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we'll see what they have. But to me, the Vanderbilt one, that's the trickier one. Like Vandy, like.
Are you really worried about Vanderbilt?
They can't lose. They can't.
Yeah. No, I know you
they
can't
lose
lose
that
it,
game.
but
And it's going to be tricky because in Vanderbilt's case, Vandy has a pretty clear path, and they've got some momentum from last year.
Yeah.
You know, they ended the season with a bang.
Kentucky's better, but it's a road game. You know,
Yeah.
it's a road game. It's your first big. It's your first big. Like, you know, it's your first test of the year.
And I think they're better. I think Vanderbilt will be better
Yeah.
this year. So
My big game that just win this damn game is in Starkville because they should be vulnerable, but that place, I mean, Kentucky hasn't won there since 2008. It's just something about it. I don't know what it is. And it's been a lot of blowouts, too. The last 4 or 5 have been by about 16.5 points, something like that, the margin of defeat for Kentucky. And if the early season games are the ones that, like, you can, especially early on, you're like, well, if X, Y, and Z happens, you can dream big. But where Mississippi State falls on the calendar, I mean, it's around Alabama, and like you got to go to South Carolina. That can be tricky. You've got this tough kind of slog, and going down there, they're going to be physical in the trenches because that's what they do. Surviving and getting that monkey off your back because, I mean, that's a game that's going to go away. The cross-divisional games go away. So you're making one last trip down to Starkville. Please take care of business.
Yeah.
Take care of business.
Oh, yeah. One last question. Where are each you voting Kentucky in your preseason poll, and why is it below Tennessee?
I got them third behind Tennessee.
Third, yeah.
Oh, I'm second ahead of Tennessee.
Yeah, we've got to. I think Tennessee earned some benefit of the doubt last year with what they did.
Yeah.
I think the defense took strides. I don't think they're great on defense, but you got to assume Heupel, they're going to score 40-something points or 38 to 42 points. You got to assume because, and to me too, it's like they've got insurance for Joel Milton.
Yeah.
Because they got the Dinko back there in case, you know, break glass in case of emergency. So, and I think the schedule for Kentucky, stuff you got to go to Georgia. You get Bama at home. Those will be, you know, you got to kind of write in red ink already. 2 losses. So I would say I give it the edge to Tennessee, but I think they deserve that after the year.
Mike's got that Kentucky-Bama game as the biggest trap game of the season. So
Yep.
I'd like to go up there, boys. I ain't going to lie. Now y'all serving beer, I may go visit.
Yeah. It's a miracle. It's a summer miracle.
He forced Spurrier to retire. He got Pruitt out of there.
Got Coach O fired.
Got Coach O out of there. Now can he get the big dog out of there?
See you later, Saban.
Before you boys go, tell the audience where can they find you, and they got to listen to 11 Personnel. I listen to every episode.
So the KSR YouTube channel is where we do all of our shows. Just Kentucky Sports Radio on there, KentuckySportsRadio.com. We've got a message board, KS Board, KSR Plus. Roush KSR is my Twitter handle. Yours is?
Adam Luckett, KSR.
Yeah. So we're all over the place. Come find us. Come see about it.
Appreciate you, boys.
Yeah,
That
thank
was
you
great.
again.